y responsables de veterinaria de nuestra universidad. Saludo a las personas del comité científico, saludo al doctor Richard Robert, que está escuchando la ponencia de su compañero, y voy a presentar en este momento al doctor Marc Montagu. Originario de Gante, Bélgica, es uno de los biólogos moleculares más reconocidos de todo el mundo. Es un privilegio para esta universidad y para Valencia tener a este hombre de ciencia y a este hombre de corazón grande. Ha sido profesor titular y director del Laboratorio de Genética de la Universidad de Gante y director científico del Departamento de Genética del Instituto Interuniversitario de Biotecnología en Flandes. Junto con Josel Schell, es el fundador de una de las empresas de biotecnología con más éxito en el mundo, Plant Genetic Systems. Además, es el presidente de la Federación Europea de Biotecnología, de la Federación Europea de toda Europa. El doctor Van Montagu es el creador de las plantas modificadas genéticamente. De todo lo que estamos hablando aquí estos días, en él está su origen. En 2013 fue galardonado con el Premio Mundial de Alimentación. Uno de los hombres más escuchados en todo el mundo en este tema, que hoy tendremos el privilegio nosotros de oír. Es un firme defensor de los organismos modificados genéticamente, ya que según sus investigaciones son una tecnología inofensiva, y lo subraya, porque nadie ha podido demostrar en estos años un solo peligro para la salud o para el medio ambiente. Y fíjense ustedes cómo estamos decondicionados, que la mayoría de las preguntas de esta mañana iban en este sentido. Cuando estos científicos hablan permanentemente de ello y de la agricultura tradicional, pocos científicos hablan. En 2015 impulsó el fondo Marc y Nora Van Montagu, su esposa, con el apoyo de la Fundación Rei Balduino de Bélgica, que impulsa proyectos de agricultura sostenible en el continente africano. Qué importante para África que haya hombres como este, mujeres como la suya, que están dedicando su vida a ello. El doctor Van Montagu es autor de más de 1.100 publicaciones científicas. Sí, han oído bien, más de 1.100 publicaciones científicas que han recibido más de 85.000 citas. Ha recibido 8 doctores honoris causa de diferentes universidades y es miembro de varias academias de las ciencias. En 1990 recibió el título de varón del rey de los belgas, en el reconocimiento a sus logros científicos. Señor Barón, mucho gusto en que esté con nosotros. El profesor Van Montagu ha consagrado toda su carrera científica bajo la convicción de que lo más importante es llevar la tecnología a quienes más lo necesitan. Y la biotecnología es una de sus disciplinas científicas que pueden ayudar a combatir realmente en esta dimensión que él ha estudiado profundamente, el problema del hambre en el mundo. Hoy nos hablará de este enfoque. Señoras, señores, recibamos con el aplauso que se merece a este gran señor.
Okay, wow. Probably my voice was loud enough.
Ahora perfecto.
I will not. The title is maybe intriguing, science, ideology, daily life, but I think the work we had with GMOs over these 30 years and the fact that it was not accepted by society made me think more about what is science and how do people believe science is and how do scientists believe the world is. And then I've been frustrated that many scientists are not so much interested in sociology or in economy, and that we don't see the whole of our life, and that's why the title came. We'll take on these points along the facts. And since some of you are in science, I will go in depth in some aspects of GMO and GMO plants. So sorry for those who are not scientists. It looks very mysterious and boring, probably. Let's go on with that. Yeah.
So
the history has been said, but we should think it over. How we came for just gathering food and hunting, and how we started to
our thinking
and our knowledge to make crosses, to select plants, and how we came then to the science we are there. We only on each of the slides, I'm afraid, and especially on this one, we could talk for hours. But that's why I hope you receive the PowerPoint at a certain moment. There are always references, and they most are from this year or last year. So there you can go yourself and think over what are the different time schedules, and you will see this novel foods. It's extremely recent that we are doing the best of what science can bring, what the best of life science can bring at this moment to progress with this plant. And Malthus said already in the 18th century, with this population increase, it will be impossible. There will be famine all over the planet. We will die. It will not be possible to have food. And human ingenuity was able to do many things, and today we call it precision agriculture. And especially took this slide that's often used by Greenpeace and others to see how dangerous it looks, how today agriculture is.
But that's reality.
That's the only way that we in the developed world are rich, and we have this food production, and it's an industrial problem. And this sky that is frightening makes that the way we communicate. And this intensive agriculture, we cannot go back. We are now with 7.5 billion. We will go 9-10 billion. We can dream about lost paradise and all the natures that are around, but we have the real fact we are so many, and we are all have to be all together, or otherwise we are exploiting. We are back in slavery. We have a world of the maximum of injustice if we don't find solutions. So out of this intensive agriculture, we have to make sustainable intensive agriculture, and that should be possible. Science has progressed, and that's what I will try to rapidly summarize. It is possible on the acreage that we have already destroyed about nature to grow double or triple if we use science. And that's why it's so bad that some ideologies really block using science. But go back in history, very often science has been blocked by ideology. Humans survived it. That's why we are there. And that goes on. Ideologies is fantastic for motivating us, for making solidarity with other humans. As an individual, we need sometimes ideologies to realize society we are living in. But ideologies are very dangerous for what scientists call secondary effects. Ideologies can do an enormous amount of damage if you don't use the good reason, and if you don't know what is society, what is spiritual life, what is beliefs, and what is sensations, and what is joy of living. Many things that scientists don't like to touch because it's too complicated. Humans have done it for 50,000 years, 60,000 years, in the other conditions they were. And in that way, during evolution, we have our neurobiology, our system, our brain, our emotions that develop. And that's the way we have to think for the rest of the expose that I want to make here. And if you now be more concrete, and you just think about the Industrial Revolution, when science was coming up in the 19th century, 18th century, 19th century, Kalestos Juma, he's from Kenya, and he's professor in sociology at Harvard. He wrote a book, Innovation and Its Enemies. And it's very interesting. All the discussions that went on before coffee or cacao was accepted. That came from strange areas. Columbus brought it. And should we use it? Coffee came before from Ethiopia, from Africa, and it spread in the Middle East. And all the caliphs and the Muslim thinkers were, should we allow coffee? It stimulates. We'll not go into detail. Read the book. It's very interesting. And also think that since a very long time, humans talk about precautionary principle. There are discussions from the 17th century where people already say you should not think about danger and frighten people. You should absolutely go to the last sentence. See, the right moral attitude is, well, I think this light doesn't work too well, is calculating the probability that it will strike. If something you see it's dangerous, then you have to consider. Then you can talk about precautionary principles. Will you use it? But you can invent 1,000 things that are dangerous. It has no meaning. Although it becomes a principle of inactivity if you would go to the end. Because for every action that we are doing, it has been, Rich pointed it out. We know it's dangerous, but how far is it dangerous? And that is what we have to consider. And remember, in UK in the 19th century, when the cotton industry came, when the mills were there, and all the new textiles, people destroyed it because it's the craftsman from a century ago that really has the knowledge, and that was the beauty. And now with all this mechanization, it's horrible. That's how people live. But that's important. You shouldn't laugh with it. It has happened, and it happens every day. That's Greenpeace that's there, destroying what the plant genetic engineers are proposing to do. And we have to see how to overcome it. And the only way to think about it, discuss with it, and come to a consensus. And listen to the scientists. You don't have to accept it, but at least listen. And don't say, that I know better, I feel I know better, because that's what the danger is. We can go back, and it's often a shame that scientists and engineers in their education are not really presented how people felt many thousand years ago. Plato was already talking about the mind and the soul, and it was the mind and the body, how they were sometimes opposed, and how the soul had to solve it. And religion has been an enormous help for many people to feel that how these problems have to be solved, because science is so recently, and so we have to see how we can go further on. And how we can go further on is really talk about human ecology, how humans live together, how humans live with the planet, with all the other living organisms. And you can go to the extreme, like many people do, because it's science. That's just seeing what the neurobiology is doing. But it's so recent. You don't think that you will find tremendous solutions there. But See what the pets can give you, what parts of the brains are activated when you are praying, and see that it is important, and did it has a meaning. What meaning it is, that's another story. But it is, and that's a science. See what there is. And then how you interpret it, that's next to you. Another. Einstein, if you see his family life, his relations with persons, sometimes very complicated, and many people will be shocked. That is life. And thanks to his tremendous contribution to physics, all what we can do in exploring the whole universe at the moment, and all the other instruments the physics have been made it possible. And we have to realize that, and very often life scientists stick to their narrow part, because that's the ethics of science. That what you do, it has to be done well, and it has to be correct. And your colleague should criticize when you didn't see that. At that moment you can do only a very limited part of the work. And we have to see that on this planet we are all together, and everybody in his speciality should communicate, but then you should listen also what this communication is bringing. So that's to be didactic. It's a whole. But let's see three major points that may be a help to see the opposition. There is the science, there is the society, but the society is not living. The society, because it's so expanding, we need the economy. And science gives the facts, but does give the products. In a laboratory, at a university, at a research institute, you don't make our economy. It's the industry who does it. You can say horrible capitalism. Yes, but till now we have tried many alternatives. At the moment we are there with the horrible capitalism. How can you make it more acceptable for society, that it is not back to slavery? You can discuss it, see how you do it, and not destroy it. Because till now, each time when we try to destroy structures that we have built, we were in a trouble. But we could curb it. Slavery. It has been abolished. It's slowly, and it's still not, in some states it's still there. But at least human effort and solidarity could do something. Maybe with economy we will find also solutions. But work on the solutions, and don't start shooting each other. In society, many people have different beliefs. We have seen the horror when some say, my God knows better than your God. It takes some time before people feel that we all the same, and that we all have the same neurobiology, and that we have to act together. That's also science. The science correct, but the scientists are the same people who are in society, are the same people who are in economy. And that's why it is a whole. But sometimes it helps to be a bit didactic and see people each in their speciality, but you have to know that all of the specialities touches us. Before I really start, I hesitated to use this slide because it's typical for that I use in my course that I gave last week still at graduate students at the University of Ghent in plant biotechnology. The first one is in Flemish, but it's because I could talk hours about that. It's a person, Etienne Vermeer, who wrote a very voluminous book, on the history of philosophy. Most people live without knowing anything about the history of philosophy. If you start reading it, you just are confused, because so many bright minds who say the opposite of the other. But it's very important. The book is called The River of Heraclitus, because Heraclitus said you cannot can never swim twice through the river because the water meanwhile has changed.
Of course, he didn't
talk about all the microorganisms in the water that meanwhile were changed. Okay. The book is brilliant because he and Johann Brackmann, his successor,
write it
and just analyze what all the different philosophers have said,
saying where they were wrong,
but not saying
what is the truth.
Because
you cannot say what is the truth.
Life is going on. We have to see, and that's a very complicated concept. But I also did it because it's only written in Dutch, and it's never been translated. And I'm told the two other books are from Gottlieb. I never read them. So it's very dangerous to talk about something that you didn't read. But that's what we do in society. We often talk about things we don't know anything about. But the same authors told me that this Gottlieb is very good, and I've read what they said, so I have confidence, and that's why I point out the dream of reasons and the dream of enlightenment.
Of course, I
ordered them because it's only some month ago that they pointed out that this book existed. That's why I also give it here.
But now back
to society. That's the reality.
I call it
overpopulation.
And you can
make nuances in it, but that's the problem we have to solve. And we have to think, what does it mean? Overpopulation means that always new diseases will come up, because that's biology. If there is a host, there will be a pathogen. And that is what kind of organisms, and we see how in nature the organisms that survive, what were the solutions they took. We have to find also this solution, and maybe not sufficient. The problem
nutrition.
Of nutrition. It's not only, as has already been pointed out, the amount of food, but the quality of food. And if the quality of food is bad, if just some stable food without the necessary vitamins, without iron, zinc, and other trace elements that we need, then we have stunted children. But stunted children in development have also stunted neurological development and stunted brains. And in some countries, if you see that the stunted children are 45-50% of the population, that means a lot. And that means a lot in our own societies for those who are left out and have not the correct feeding. So it's an enormous responsibility to us all what we have if we don't use science and if we don't use the analysis. And if I say sociology and economy, you would say, what is it there? Well, we have to, for those amount of people, we have to organize a society where really the amount of food and the amount of knowledge will be there, that we can live together without fighting. It's the problem of an individual with his thoughts and the society we have to live in. And we have to develop an economy that's acceptable. And that's why the population growth is so important. Yes, we dream of lost paradise. And we have the emotion. And if you talk to people who during the last World War were in Auschwitz, with all the horrors they've seen, they will tell you that they survived because their emotions made them look to a tree that was there. Just the sunrise that they suddenly saw. And they had some feelings. And that gave them the strength. The strength, for some praying, for some by thinking to science, but that's what the world is. And we want to save that, absolutely. And we can still. But we will not if we go on fighting each other with atom bombs, or if we go on destroying the latest of the resources.
Now let's go back
to plant science.
It's very complicated
also. Because when we started molecular biology of plants by making transgenic plants, because till then a lot of botany was like stamp collection. You collect species, you describe them, but
you cannot go further because there was no real molecular biology of plants. But there was something that was there, very important, that was plant breeding. That's all the plants we use for our economy, for our feed.
The people
in schools of agriculture, they laughed with the people who were doing what we call systems biology, who want to know all these pathways. But no, slowly it comes together. And among scientists, we have to learn how to use the different sciences that we have developed. But for society, that's the way you look at the tree. The emotions it gives, the emotions the painting gives. Of course, I talk a Belgian painter, Marc, the surrealist, because life looks sometimes like a surrealist sees it, because with all the horrors that are happening and all the joy that there is, the misery and the joy that also you have together. So you can understand how a surrealist looks. But a scientist should also think. That is society and how society thinks. Now, we'll not go into molecular biology, but just remember, when I started university in 1951, it was biochemistry and it was fascinating. But what we thought was some enzymes that reacted and some products that were made, and we were all trained in organic chemistry, and we found it fantastic that there were proteins that it catalyzes and make other bonds that in organic chemistry you could not make. And that was the life science of the moment. And then came Watson Crick and DNA and what we call the central dogma.
The name is
very well chosen. It was a dogma. Because scientists, look what the brilliant progress we have from RNA, RNA and proteins. And now, suddenly, after the gene technology came there and the sequence technology came, we see the enormous importance of proteins, of RNA, all the regulatory circuits that RNA is doing. In genetics is becoming completely different. We will come back to genetics, but also the proteins and all the modification of proteins. And finally, biochemistry is that. And for those who are a bit specialist, there is a model plant, Arabidopsis, that we use a lot because it was simple. It had between 20,000 and 25,000 genes, a living organism with so many, with only 20,000 genes, that must be. And we studied, and the sequence was done, and we see, there was the splicing, where Rich had the Nobel Prize for, that gives some changes in the RNA, but then we saw many more changes that were there. And now we see that probably there are a million different proteins if you also take the protein modifications. So these 20,000 genes make more than 1 million proteins. So science is very complicated, and we are very far from the central dogma. And that's just the only point that I wanted to point out. Never make dogmas, do it in science and analyze, and then you progress. And we can explain it because if a plant has to adapt to stress situations, it will modify the proteins and all the organisms, all the living organisms. That's the first thing. And only later on you modify the genes. That's the ultimate. And that's then the steps in evolution. But that takes a lot of time. We will go not into detail about that. Yeah. I thought there should be. Yeah.
Okay.
From the genetics that I pointed out. Waddington in 1942 called it the name epigenetics. And this literature is very complicated. People read it, didn't know what they meant. But original articles of Mendel are also complicated. And many people, if you read the original articles, you're astonished that he came to this type of conclusions. But no, epigenetics, we start understanding that there are pathways that are used in embryological development and then switched off because they would disturb. But under stress situations, sometimes you can switch it on.
And sometimes in that way, new pathways can go further. It's completely under study. Again, the reference is there. I will not go into the details, but that's the future of our understanding genetics. And genetics is not a dogma. Something is there, and that was horrible because it had meant genetics. And people who thought they had rational arguments to say there are superior people, there are inferior people, and it's the genes who... Genes have an influence, but there are so many other environmental influences we have, and the way you handle it, and the way you learn to handle it, makes a lot of change. With the handicap you have, you can do brilliant other things. And everybody is a mutant from the other, and that we have to understand. And epigenetics brings us a bit closer to that. And recently, it's another progress that has been made, realizing that we are full with microorganisms, that we have maybe 4 trillion, 3.6 or 4 trillion microorganisms, more than we have cells. And all these microorganisms, they sometimes send RNAs, but surely proteins, and surely a lot of products. And all of physiology, our health, is influenced by these microorganisms. And for those who had a course of microbiology, there you accept that the genetics of a microorganism is what we call horizontal gene transfer. Pieces of DNA goes from one organism to another. So that is genetic engineering of the microorganism. That's how it started in the early 70s when Cohen and Boyer did and Paul Burke did the first cloning experiments. But that's absolutely going on in nature at every moment on trillions and trillions of our bacteria and other bacteria that are covering all living organisms. So is genetic engineering natural? It's at least natural for microorganisms. Well, we could show that also in many cases in plants there is horizontal gene transfer. And the first one was the agrobacterium story. But it goes further. And there are many things on this slide that we have to see for ecology is important because all organisms live together. We have to do the science. We have to do the science of ecology, and we have to do the science of human ecology and see how all this mix. And that is what life science stands for today, and what life science has to do. And when I wrote there, Richard Dawkins, who is not too highly appreciated by people with strong religious feelings, it's still the ancestors believe. When he writes it, it's like to go to Compostelle. He starts here with our genetic, and he shows evolution. Goes back, and along the road, like the tree of life, other organisms come in, and they each tell their story, and they tell the story how they acquired this system and that system. It's a real, very interesting philosophical approach, reading evolution like Dawkins writes it. So we have to. And another one that I want to advise for those who like biochemistry is Nick Lane at University College London. The vital question. He shows that 4.6 billion years the planet was there. How from inorganic chemistry you went to organic chemistry. How some membranes were there. How electron transfer, hydrogen transfer, how a cell started. And then for many billion years there were the microorganisms. And then there was a symbiosis between microorganisms, and the eukaryotes came. It was suddenly appearing, but and
once the
eukaryote started, it's just like the whole world would be a bag of genes, and it's mostly 30% are the same, and all the others are in evolution. You can see how they came out of the other. But if you want to really, it's written in a style that I think is understandable for non-scientists, but that
it's at the limit.
It's at the limit, but
have a try.
Have a try. It's worthwhile.
Anyway,
today,
plant science
is progressing very rapidly. Yes, we did genetic engineering, but already before Barbara McClintock got the Nobel Prize for the movable elements in the genome. Now, with the sequences, we start understanding what is going on with these movable elements. I will not want that today you understand it, but again, there are references. Think about it. And take all this non-coding DNA, because at least you should know that in the genome, it's maybe sometimes only 10% or less that is coding for this protein. And all this non-coding DNA, what is it doing in the regulatory? We are slowly finding it out what it can be do. Again, if you're interested in genetics, that's where the next progresses will come from. And that's why scientists are so focused on trying to solve these problems, and they forget about society. And it's dramatic also. So the scientists have an enormous responsibility. Some at least do the step and come out of it, but we still have to have the possibility to talk to society to find the words. Because again, I'm there with my triangle. But now I call it discover, innovate, and communicate. Because that are the three major things.
On the top,
the picture you see there is a crown gall. Because we started our work in the late 60s when seeing that the bacterium could infect a wound in a plant, and cells proliferated. Why?
What was going
on? And we found it. Well, we didn't find. In literature, we saw that in France, people that nobody knows about, Morel and Tempé, demonstrated that there were in these tumors compounds from simple acids, pyruvic acid, lysine, pyruvic acid, arginine, glutamic acid, ketoglutaric acid, that were a nutrient for this bacteria. So this bacteria forced the plant to make a structure, and that often happens. That's the word about the parasites or the symbionts, making a plant of an organism to make some product that's good, and then it survives. But when we saw that the bacteria made one compound, and on the same plant another bacteria made another compound, simple genetics from thinking that this bacteria injects some genetic information to make this compound, and that's the way we found that there were plasmids and agrobacterium and the gene engineering. So immediately we said, there are many questions, science questions there, but it can bring innovation. It can improve science. And we did this series of GMO. And again, that picture there has a meaning. It's rapeseed in Canada. There it's called canola. And we could find out through gene engineering to make hybrid vigor. We also started the first BT, Bacillus thuringiensis, plants that make their own insecticide. We also made possibilities of using less toxic herbicides. We did it for Basta. Monsanto tried for glyphosate. They were much later because glyphosate, notwithstanding what Greenpeace says, is not very dangerous. It's much less dangerous than many other compounds that we use daily. But because in nature, 10% of the soil bacteria degrade glyphosate by a system that Monsanto was not able to clone. We go not in the details, but we made contribution. But this contribution that I hear was making hybrid vigor for all organisms. And industry has made an agreement
only use it
for
canola
because we had already done it in Ghent, and it was already sold to the farmers, and the farmers could use it.
We
also made it in India
for
their mustard. Mustard oil is used. It's the same crucifer from the same family. But their industry, Bayer, was strong enough, who had bought the startup that we had made, was strong enough. The government has approved it, the mustard, the transgenic mustard in the 90s. But Bayer said we will not use it because there was an agreement, because the big agrochemical industry to have developing what they were doing as positive, and they do a lot of positive. The industry is important for many things. They wanted to have a monopoly to be sure that all this investment would bring back money for the shareholders. So they made a monopoly, and indeed the monopoly is there with Pioneer, DuPont, Bayer, BASF. There are only 5 or 6. And so, the hybrid vigor that would be important for an enormous amount of plants in Africa has never been used. Now, under pressure, what goes on, Bangladesh and India is reconsidering the mustard, and probably in some years it will come out, and other things will follow. Because for all the orphan crops, where I will talk now about, we will need it. So at the moment, see that it is only use these transgenics for a limited number of crops, a limited number of traits, but that it is at least 180 million hectares. That's 10% of the surface of all agriculture. That's already important for the companies who made it. But no, it's badly needed. It can no longer be blocked because the whole world needs it. And the possibilities are there to make it. So just the facts. If you see in the developed countries, but also in the developing countries, what was made brings already as money and makes as less use of toxic chemicals. There is already an enormous advantage. That's why I'm convinced all the GM story will go on, because it is clearly that so much more can be done.
If it is
unnatural, I had give the examples of the horizontal gene transfer in microorganisms, but in nature, is it unnatural? And there people talk, and that regularly comes up. The tree of life is you don't recognize it, but that's a complex joke. I will not go into it. But the major lesson is that you know that it is misleading to talk about human genes, pig genes, rat genes, that it is. I've seen the posters. Your salad is crisp because I put a rat gene in it. It was a poster of Greenpeace that they spread in Holland. Because with all the dikes, people hate rats because they make hole in the dikes, and over the many hundred years dramas of that. Okay. In Hong Kong, I have seen the poster of Greenpeace. Your fish is big because I put a human gene in it. Chinese have a horror of eating ancestors. So a human gene, how can you eat it? So they give a characteristic to a gene is the utmost nonsense in science, but talks to people. And the same, if you put a pig gene, you know you will have the Muslim community against you. And that, if Greenpeace does that, we know that they're willingly lying, that they are cheating us. And that is rather dramatic for a scientist to be confronted with this situation. Because unnatural, now people, when you do grafting, it's a Nature paper from some years ago, people see that pieces of chromosome are exchanged when you do grafting. So the tree that and people working in fruit trees know that how much through grafting or in ornamentals, how much change there can be made. That is genetic engineering. But more recently,
somebody from
Ghent and working together with the Potato Institute have shown that all the sweet potatoes that are used in the world, all of them have the complete sequence that is transferred by agrobacterium. Because there is also some genes for hormones that stimulated the proliferation. Okay, well, okay.
So
probably that happened 6,000 years ago. 6,000 years long enough?
You can always say no.
You can always say no, you will need 100,000 years.
You see it is nonsense.
You see it is nonsense, but we know that this horizontal gene transfer has happened, but it's only recently discovered, 2 years ago.
Why
it's so recently discovered? Because now we have the tools. And sure, if we start studying other events that happened in nature, we will see many other aspects of horizontal gene transfer that went from bacteria to plants, or from insects to plants, because there are also a lot of insect galls, and it has not been studied. No, people in society to accept, they must see the advantage of it. That's why I said innovate. There are things that are already used for 10% of our agriculture with corn, soya. In Europe, forbidden to use GMOs, but there are 75 GMOs that are imported, mostly with soya, because for animal feed, we need soya beans. We cannot without. And so at that moment, Europe says we cannot grow it. It was grown in Romania and Bulgaria. They paid the farmers not to grow it because for ideological reasons and for negotiations they had with Greenpeace. But if you can import 75 GM events and use it in your industry, is it dangerous? It's clear that it is not dangerous with all the strict laws of GM that the European Union has. If it would have been dangerous, they would have forbidden it. Let's go back to the potato disease.
You know it for
the story of the famine in Ireland, but it was not only in Ireland, and it was also all over Europe. And it was not only the potato disease, there was famine all over Europe in the beginning of the 19th century, because there was drought for climate problems that there were at that moment. In Switzerland, there was an enormous, many people from Switzerland moved to the States already, like the Irish moved to the States, because that was new agriculture that would be possible in that period. Okay. People have tried to make potatoes that are resistant against the Phytophthora. They could do it. It took them 35 years. Oh yeah, I'll do it here. 35 years to do it, and they came up with a potato that is resistant, but nobody wants to eat. It's good for industry to make starch, but not for eating. No, that we have the genes cloned and you can stacking the genes, you can do it. It still took 10 and 12 years because potato is a hexaploid, and its breeding is very difficult. Now the Dutch have two classical methods, not genetic engineering, made diploids of it, the company Solenta, and now you can do the breeding in 2 years' time. So you can stack the genes. You can stack the genes even without GMO. With GMO you could do it much more thoroughly, because these genes that have been cloned give moderate resistance, and if you stack, but we have 35 different genes already that you could stack and make it. So the possibilities are there. That's one example. Rich has told about the brinjal, but we have to remember that the product that till now was spread on the brinjal very toxic, forbidden by the Convention of Stockholm. And no company, since a long time, doesn't make the chemical, but they make it in India. And so the Indian government many companies that makes this very toxic phosphoramidite. And it is normally not the farmer who sprays on this picture, but it are the children who spray. And every year there are thousands of casualties by poisoning of this chemical. Bangladesh finally was the first country that was able to put it through, and the farmers love it. And now in India, everybody wants this resistant, this BT brinjal, because eggplant is very prone to attack by insects. We talked about golden rice. In Ghent, somebody has made folate rice. Folate, every pregnant woman knows that there is often a shortage, here in our country, a shortage of folate. And they take folate pills. Otherwise you have spina bifida, or you have other sometimes lethal diseases for the fetus or the child. And now, through gene engineering, we can have folate rice and others. So there is a whole list of new plants that are ready in the laboratory to go. And if you go to these figures again, ask if you're interested, a copy of this. But I mentioned the story about the stunted children. We have so many areas where we know that the public health goal of second generation of the GM crops that are ready in the laboratory could help, and that can be enriched. It is not only the rice. It has been done in sorghum, it has been in cassava, it has been done in potatoes. So all these constructions are ready to go. So we have to see that we can accept it, and that these new generations, and they have all advantages, both for the disease, but other aspects that can help the consumption, that can help the waste of the food, like just the browning of apples. It's luxus, because it's done for the rich countries. That in an apple, if there is a bruise, it doesn't brown. But otherwise, if it's brown, people throw it out. And if you make an apple that is no longer browning, and if at the same time the taste is good, it's positive. But I don't say it's something tremendous, but at least immediately in the States it's accepted, and it has the authorization to grow, because economy works for it. And we have to understand that economy, you could dispute about the ethics of that economy, but that's the way our society works at the moment. That's the solution we have. Can we do better? We hope we can do better, but we have to work on it. It will not come automatically. It will not be there as a mirror. And again, a lot of data that you can read there in this review article, but on all what has been done, and in all the areas in Africa, typical for Africa, what crops which are important, how we can work on it, why they are blocked because of regulation. They can go sometimes for some field trials, but they are not allowed to grow. And that's what Rich pointed out. That's the scandal for Africa. We have so many solutions ready, and we have to go for it. And we have to find in society people who fund. The whole story about hybrid vigor, I said, it's enormous how hybrid vigor works. But scientists have done that without knowing what is hybrid vigor, what is the molecular biology behind hybrid vigor. But it works, and people use it. And the companies use typical through breeding. In Europe, nobody will plant back his seeds for corn. They always go to Pioneer, where they have the hybrid that at the same time has some other traits and has in the seeds some coating that protect it.
the whole extension services in agriculture are very sophisticated, and they came there because of the multinationals and about these companies. So they have positive effects, and that's very often in nature what the humans do. Some of the things are positive and others are detrimental, and it's up to us to discuss and to argument what will we save, what will we use, but don't go to extreme, to ideologies. Capitalism is impossible. For some aspects it is impossible, but at least go step by step, which you want to abolish now, what you want to try to control without destroying the economy. And that's what the story about the influence of the big multinationals in agriculture and in agriculture development.
There are so many beans
in Brazil, because nobody cared about the beans. They made transgenic beans resistant against some major disease, but then other diseases come up. So at the moment, it's also already 12 years that they have made this construct, and they are still not used because meanwhile already another disease came up, and that was more urgent, like the virus diseases. But working on the transformation of orphan crops, as we call it, and there is an organization in the United States, Chocolate Mars, the chocolate bars from Mars. They, family holding, they support a lot sequencing of orphan crops, knowledge on orphan crops for helping in Africa work that would give better orphan, because that's what the people have, the orphan crops, and nobody is interested in it. And there is a list of hundreds, and they are already at 120, and we could make a long list of orphan crops in the different countries, why they are used. And if you see the states, there are the major crops that we know, like corn, wheat, maize, and rice even. But if you go to Africa, it's the orphan crops that are used, and the others much less. So it's on the orphan crops we have to work. Bananas is a luxus for many in the developed country, because people moderate interest, but Rich pointed already out that it is crucial for some areas in Africa. And it's possible to do it. The transgenic bananas are there, and that the field trials were allowed. So now, luckily, commercialization will be able to start. So there is progress. And if you go you could analyze, that's another current opinion in virology, examples. For all the virus diseases, it's only molecular biology that can help and make constructs that block against these viruses. And other viruses will come up, okay, sure, but then molecular biologists will have faster tools and able to block it and to replace it. That's the way future agriculture will be there. So sustainable intensification from the point of view of the laboratory is possible. Innovation is there, has been used, and we know that by 2050 what we have to do. So we have to do also GMOs, and not only the classical breeding, we have to do CRISPR-Cas, we have all the tools that we know, because we know they are not dangerous, so we have to work that they can be used. And repeat, just like Greenpeace starts with barriers, no, we don't want GMOs, we have to be there to say, no, there is nothing dangerous there, because it seems that the way people only listen and react. If some with authority say, no, there is no danger for animals and humans, no, there is no danger for the environment. And that's what is being proven. And we have to, of course, there is a discussion. This meaningful agriculture, is it a block with agrobusiness monopoly like it is at the moment or not? Well, discuss it.
work on it and see how you can solve it. And then we have to see that the real good equation is what risk do you take? And risk I consider economy, sociology also, because very rightly, Greenpeace says it's not because you can do something that you have to do it. That's elementary logic. You must not be Greenpeace for knowing that. But at least you have discussed. And then you have to see what is the real risk of doing it, or not doing it. And not doing it, at that moment, there you are at the right instead of that. So what is the real world is a shame sometimes to put these slides up, but that's the reality. And we also just want to see it, this reality. And we only discuss on some aspects of capitalism. And that is an enormous responsibility we take. And again, for people who are rationalists and think that rationalism can solve the problems, you have to see how limited our thinking is. And this book, like a lot, and I think I advise it to everybody, Daniel Kahneman is a Nobel Prize in economy. And in economy, it's not like in life science. Okay, yes, sorry, I should better. In economy, you cannot know really the facts. There are so many uncertainties, and still you have to make decisions. So you can use accountancy sciences, like people do in an insurance company. Do the mathematics of what is the possibility that this accident will happen or not, and make your economy in that. There are always out, but each time you're blocked by the way our capacity of forward thinking and solving the problem. And he has a lot of little gimmicks. If this person gives you that, and then you take that, and you have to make decisions. What is the right solution, A or B? And many times we see that we are very sloppy thinkers, that we are too lazy, I don't know. Or in our neurobiology, we don't concentrate well enough to think wisely. And there he shows the limitations of rationality. So we have to use all the capacities we have in us, the emotions. And it looks ridiculous, but we all have the same emotions still. Many rationalists are against emotions. It's emotional thinking. Yes, it's emotional thinking if you make an ideology out of it and you block the science to progress. Individually, you will be the victim from not thinking correctly, and you have to take the responsibility that you want to live by not thinking very sharply. But it would be better if we can convince our students and our community to do a bit better thinking. And it's not rationalism that is wrong, it's not using the rationalism that is wrong. And that is a point that we have to say. We did, we'll finish, and because otherwise, in Trends of Plant Science, we did some studies together with the group in philosophy, because scientists never, and we came to conclusions that there were three major points that each time come up when you talk about GMOs. That's the story that Rich already touched, essentialism. Genes is characteristic of an organism. So the DNA is really either sacred or you feel that really that gives the characteristic. So if you put a fish gene in tomatoes, surely these tomatoes must smell fish. That's the emotional thinking. And it's here taken in extreme that you would see that everybody can see that it is a nonsense. You can experience that it is a nonsense. But for many of our reasonings that we do in daily life, we think still about this essentially. Another one is the theological thinking. That there is a reason. And if you make a construction and you then approve it, and then approve it, and that's the way evolution goes. Monod already, Lazare in Nécessité, has said it. And of course, if you are further in evolution, it looks like there is an intelligent design. And some fundamentalist in Protestant religion sees that is intelligent design, so we cannot touch it. And people are against GMO. That's again a case of ideology, because it's logic that if one is on another, that you see if there is a kind of progress. But then another way is disgust. We all know it. It's always been there, and it is very natural in evolution. We had to have disgust already in the times of gathering and hunters, because a lot of animals were poisonous, and surely a lot of plants are poisonous. So you must have fear of nature. But now, ideologies say nature is beautiful, nature is the solution. We have to go back to nature. No, nature is not beautiful or not. It's our defects, and it's our emotions who give us a certain aspect of nature. But this disgust makes that we have disgust sometimes for food, sometimes because people are homosexual, because people are clearly have another color of skin, or have another way of expressing themselves. Simply the neighbor country, we have seen so many wars between France and Germany. People had so many were indoctrinated in school in the 30s in France that the Germans were bad. The Germans were indoctrinated that this and this were bad. And so we can so many cases of disgust that we see. So now people say, I'm disgusted by GMOs. I never will eat the GMOs. In Africa I have seen people who said me, I'd rather see my children starving than feeding them with GMO. And it was a person who was studying, a black person, it was in Uganda, who was studying it while working. He was already in his late 30s, was working in the United States. So we know how complex it is. And that is what we have now to handle. See, what is social and emotional learning? We can make decisions on ethical standards, and we can talk about safety and social norms, but I think it's impressive to know what is responsible decision making. And that's not only logic. It's all aspects of society and our living community we have to think. And have to analyze and then make the decision. Otherwise, and now maybe you will be astonished that I give here Salvatore Dali. It's called A Construction with Boiled Beans, 1936, and he's called it Premonition of a Civil War in Spain. And that's what will happen if we don't use reason, if we don't use science, and if we let us go by our emotions. And for agriculture, Millet. If we can only give to the farmers the solution, pray that the weather will be good, pray that it will not rain, I don't think it's a very honest solution for our society with our level of knowledge today. We have to bring them the best of science, that at least they have some confidence, and that in their work they are helped, and they are not in this type of situation. And as a last slide, I will think that it is important to see that Leonardo da Vinci, already in the 1500s, he did marvelous invention in engineering, and it was the period of engineering. But at the end of his life, I said, I have offended God and mankind by doing so little with my life. So I think that's the lesson for us. And the only thing that I at the moment can answer is I didn't think about that. And for all, if we are in arguments, first is I didn't think about that. And then you can start arguing and see what is the better. And know that you cannot do it alone, that we have to do it all together in society. Thank you.
Creo que las últimas afirmaciones del doctor Montagu nos ayudan a entender toda la síntesis de su intervención. No hay ningún peligro para los seres humanos ni para el medio ambiente. Los que entran en la dimensión teleológica y tienen en cuenta el diseño inteligente no pueden pensar que no pueda ser modificado. Al revés, justamente el diseño inteligente nos permite poder modificar, porque si no sería imposible, y la toma de decisión importantes que nos ha dicho. Lo único que a la ciencia le podríamos unir la oración, tampoco estaría mal, pero que justamente el profesor, el doctor Marc nos ha ayudado conjuntamente con Richard Robert esta mañana a ver todo lo que significan las plantas, los organismos modificables, los transgénicos, a darnos cuenta de las posibilidades inmensas para la humanidad y para ayuda a las personas que mueren de hambre y a tomar responsabilidad. Ahora tenemos unos minutos de pregunta para quien quiera poder realizarlo. Don Ismael está realizando una tesis doctoral sobre este tema y quiere tomar la palabra. Cuando quiera, señorita.
Barón Marc Montagu. Esta mañana hablaba el doctor Richard John Robert acerca del compromiso que tenemos que tener con África. ¿Cómo debemos de empezar con África? Cultivando en otras latitudes, convenciendo a estados.
Thank you very much for taking up Africa, because it's really very important that we have an eye on Africa, because FAO says that the population increase will be 1,000 or 1,100% in Africa. So it will be dramatic for the destruction that will happen. And we have the tools at the moment to help. We need to have capacity building in Africa. It's not easy. But I think there are some big laboratories in Europe where young people graduate, they have their PhD in the top of this biotechnology science, and they want to help. But there is no structure. So in Ghent, I hope that one day I can convince other institutions, like you have Doctors Without Borders, to have PhD Without Borders, that they go to Africa help. But it's not; they cannot do it alone. Like the Doctors Without Borders are strongly supported by the medical institutions in the developed world. That's the responsibility for the institutions we have here that do research in plant biotechnology or other general molecular biology and molecular genetics. And those people, because the people who go to Africa, they should not be saints and people who really give up their what you could worthy life in the world. They have to be there, stay in contact with the top science, and have publications. They could not do that. And then products. We hope that the rich countries like where you have foundations, and especially in the States with the Gates, with Zuckerman, there are 100 billiardaires who say they want to help, that such a structure would be strong enough to attract this money to work on the programs. And if that goes on, meanwhile the universities, because the people are there with the same intelligence that we have, but they don't progress in science because they are not thought about the quality of science, the reasons of doing science, and how to do science. But if there are programs running in Africa by the Africans with the help of this Postdocs Without Borders, I hope that at that moment also the quality of universities. And if you see what already is, how good the quality is in Cape Town, in Johannesburg, Pretoria, that's the beginning. It can be in Kenya if we don't have the problems there. It can be in former French Africa if France is not going on by saying GMOs are dangerous and we can imitate what Greenpeace said, because at certain moment we will not go into details about that. But that is an example of what I think can be done and is a reality. How it be done? It's like all human endeavors. You can think how it is done, but you have to do it. Otherwise, it's just loose thinking. And now is the next step. Are there enough people who want to do it? Can you communicate to the structure? We have an advantage. Meanwhile, we have all this social media that can spread a word. So publicity for a positive act is at the same level of the publicity that makes for making money and selling a product. So we have to take advantage of it and do it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Pues muy bien esta mirada a África. Le ha contestado Ismael Beiro, que está trabajando la tesis doctoral Hambre en el mundo, alimentos emergentes, el caso de los transgénicos. Le vendrá muy bien también poner ritmo hacia África y ayudar a tanta gente en cuanto termine su doctorado. ¿Más preguntas? Claro.
Gracias. Bueno, yo como me ha presentado anteriormente don José Luis Sánchez, soy el responsable de veterinaria, no es mi campo de actuación y desconozco, y creo que sería insolente por mi parte hacerle una pregunta a nivel científico, pero sí, como hombre de ciencias y como persona cristiana comprometida con el sufrimiento de todas estas personas que pasan hambre, quería agradecerle tanto a usted como al doctor Richard su trabajo, su profesionalidad y su investigación tan profunda y tan basada en una base científica muy amplia, porque quizá con este tipo de investigaciones y con estas explicaciones tan claras que han dado ustedes en este aula, muchas personas que piensan lo contrario pueden ser, si no convencidas, por lo menos llevadas a término, y sobre todo porque creo que con este tipo de investigaciones, si no son el total de la solución, sí que serán gran parte de la solución de la lacra del hambre en el mundo. Así que simplemente felicitarles desde la facultad por su intervención. Muchísimas gracias.
Más preguntas. A ver. Juan Díez.
Buenos días, soy Juan Díez. Quisiera hacerle una pregunta al ponente. Ha hablado sobre la ecuación de los riesgos que debemos asumir entre el riesgo de hacer algo o no hacerlo, y ha dicho que nuestra capacidad de pensar en el futuro es siempre muy limitada, porque normalmente somos pensadores perezosos. Un economista, esto lo decía en un contexto hablando de economía, un economista austriaco que se llamaba von Mises, que en un libro sobre la acción humana decía que sobre el futuro sí que sabemos algo los seres humanos, que es que normalmente nos equivocamos acerca de él. Y esto es una constatación que, sin embargo, podemos incorporar a la ecuación. Es decir, podemos saber que normalmente cuando evaluamos el futuro nos vamos a equivocar sobre él. Entonces, creo que esto también puede ser un aspecto que debemos sopesar. Es decir, que el futuro siempre es desconocido, pero que podemos manejar esa incertidumbre de alguna manera. Y luego, al margen de esto, entonces quería preguntarle en ese sentido, probablemente el futuro nos vamos a equivocar sobre lo que esté por venir, porque como usted bien ha dicho, surgen nuevas soluciones, pero surgen también nuevos problemas. Y luego,
¿cuál es la pregunta, don Juan?
Sí. Entonces lo que quería preguntarle es cómo podemos saber que realmente estos nuevos métodos van a conseguir solucionar nuevos problemas que ni siquiera en realidad sabemos que existen. Y luego al hilo de esto quería decirle también que la solución nunca puede ser exclusivamente científica, en el sentido de que la reflexión ética nunca es estrictamente científica, sino metacientífica. Y como usted ha hecho también una reflexión sobre la ciencia, quería también si puede añadir algo sobre este tema. Gracias.
I can start over with maybe with other words. I think we have to see how science evolved simple biochemistry when we didn't know what genes were, because it's very recent history, and it's the same person who can live through the same periods nearly. So we see what we start understanding on living organisms. In the same period we see what progress there was made in physics, and we see how science progresses with limited knowledge. The same for medicine, how medicine has developed and what the results are. So the only thing you can say that by challenging and by supporting correct science and new visions on science, we will bring new tools. And these new tools, among us other, with all the needs that our society has, we also have to apply the scientific method, the way to study the emotions, or what we call the essence of humans and their neurobiology. It's the same way of thinking. There is only one way of thinking, be it lazy or not lazy, that we have to do. So we have to try to do the best. And the ethics of a scientist is to do things as correct as possible. And then his colleagues can help him to point out the things he missed or the thinking they already do. And we are a community of scientists that bring together progress in the science. And at the same time, we need to have a community in sociology, people who know what human behavior is, who know what means feeling of joy, feeling of confidence. And for many, it is, the States it's probably for 90%, praying to God. For them, it's a kind of observation you do. What it means, just like in science. If you say it's the law of nature. The law of nature is the fact, but what is it, the law to you? It's a strange word, but we have used the word law because we were thinking before in other ways of how we organized our society and used it as the word law. We have to learn that it is a fact and not bring the emotional exclusion, what we call the ideology. So I go back to the title. We have the science, and there we can rely on, because we can help each other correct it, and we try to that it be as correct as possible. What we know. Then we have the ideology that can help us in our daily life. It's to help to use the science, but surely always go back to the science, because otherwise you came to all kind of strange conclusions that make people fight against the other. That would be the other answer.
Pues muchísimas gracias. Llevamos 4 horas de reflexión. Creo que es importante estas 4 horas de reflexión que llevamos. Creo que nos ayudará ahora a reposar en la comida intelectualmente lo que hemos aprendido. A las 4:30 de la tarde